Hi, everyone. Excited for you to be here. My name's Caitlin. I'm the Communications Coordinator at Effectiveness Institute, and I'm here with our president, George Myers.
Hi, Caitlin. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
We asked all of you guys to submit some questions about Effectiveness Institute so George can answer them. So let's get into it.
All right. Sounds good.
The first question that we have is, how was Effectiveness Institute formed and why?
Dr. Bill Maynard was the principal of Cleveland High School back in the 70s. And one of the teachers there was Tom Shampoo. And Tom and Bill really kind of became a team. And Cleveland High School at the time they were there was one of the worst high schools in the entire state. All the numbers were very bad. And after a few years of some initiatives that Tom and Bill had on building trust, respect, and dignity in the school, things turned around dramatically within a few years. And so that became the nucleus of the Effectiveness Institute. They started working with other schools. They started working with national organizations that supported schools. And then in 1980, they launched the Institute as their business to go out and reach out to schools and businesses. And lo and behold, what they taught worked everywhere, which is the magic of what we do. It's universally applicable today, just like it was back in the 70s.
And so the next question is, how did you, George, get involved with Effectiveness Institute, and why did you choose to get involved?
Well, in the mid 90s or so, I went through, at the encouragement of my brother-in-law at the time, a people skills workshop, 2-day workshop at the Institute. He knew about the Institute and Tom and Bill. And so he had me go through the workshop. He encouraged me to do that because he knew about my interest in communication and in effective leadership and effective teamwork. I was always a part of my interest in life anyway. So I went to that workshop and Tom taught it. And so I got to meet Tom. And after 2 days of that, I thought, this is really good stuff. This is like life-changing stuff. So I talked to Tom afterwards and said, I'd love to do this. And of course, I think Tom heard that from a lot of people. So, but we kept in touch because of my brother-in-law, I think. And I launched my own business doing the same kind of work in 2003. I made a career change in early 2000 to go into this work. I started my own business and did some work with the Institute on a contract basis for a few years as well. They were one of my clients. And then Tom and I started talking about a year before I joined the Institute about recruiting me into the company. And the reality was, I always kind of thought working with the Institute would be pretty awesome. So in 2007, I joined the Institute as a partner, a co-owner, and a senior facilitator. So that's how I got there. And it's been a wild ride ever since, but a great ride. I mean, it's been so much has happened. It's been an incredible journey.
So our next question that we have is, how many people work at Effectiveness Institute now?
We are a small but powerful team of 9 people. 9 different people do all the work we do at the Institute. And it's a fantastic team. I got to say, we have it rocking right now. It's pretty awesome.
I can agree with that. Our next question that we have is, what makes Effectiveness Institute's approach to people skills unique?
Great question. In fact, I was just talking about that today, as a matter of fact. The thing I loved about the workshop I went through was I was aware of different personality assessments and tools in the marketplace, the MBTI and DISC and some other ones, and there are many others too as well. And those really were valuable and useful, and they still are, I think. The thing I liked about the people skills workshop is it really is about how do we impact other people through our behavior, which we do so powerfully, in ways that create more trust and respect and better outcomes. And that was a unique slant, I thought, from what I was aware of and been through before. So I think that people skills workshop is really about, and you can go through 2 days of that and really you're just beginning the journey. Because the truth is, I've been saying this for years, and you know this, Caitlin, as well. There's so many nuances and variables to all of this, right? It's like a life work. But that part of people skills to me about recognizing that, yeah, it's our behavior that people see and have access to. That's what we want to learn about and teach about and discover. That was very exciting for me to learn about that and become more aware of. And it continues to be so today. So
the next question is, what's the difference between a behavior style assessment and a personality test?
Great question. That's a very important one. Like I mentioned before, Personality is very important to know more about, like who we are really at the core level. I'm really big on that. I'm a lifelong learner about myself, and I want to know more about why I'm the way I am. So I think that certainly there's a lot of value in knowing more about our personality. And that's why I always encourage people, take some of those personality assessments that you find useful. Those are really great and helpful tools. But the behavior part of us, how we behave, is different in that when you watch someone's behavior, you don't really know their personality, but you start to make assumptions about who they are, about what their personality is like. But it takes a while to really learn that about somebody. But someone's behavior, like right now, you're observing my behavior and you see that right away. So that part is not hidden. People access that immediately. And that's very important to be aware of. And the second thing is that can change, right? Sometimes I will become more animated. Sometimes I become less animated. Sometimes I become more task focused. And those subtle but important changes can have a big impact on other people as well. So what we teach is knowing how and when to modify your behavior situationally, intentionally, by choice, effectively, is very important. And that's not directly tied to your personality. That's different. Because again, that part is very fluid behavior, whereas personality, harder to change that quickly. In fact, I'd say we really don't change that quickly. So that's why we focus on behavior. It's equally important to personality in our work that we do.
Absolutely. I'll transition to our next question is, where do behavior styles originate from?
Well, the magic I think about Tom and Bill is when they launched the business back in 1980, they were using a personality assessment or tool at the time. And they recognized that they wanted to develop a very simple tool to understand and use that was very applicable and that related to skills. And what they discovered was the behavior concept, the idea of focusing on behavior was different, especially at that point in time. Now, I still feel like there are a lot of tools out there that continue to talk about personality. They don't really focus on behavior as much as we do. And I still feel like that's a very unique niche that Tom and Bill discovered that I think was brilliant in their discovery. And like I mentioned before, when I went through the people skills workshop, that was what caught my attention. This idea about something as dynamic as behavior, being able to learn about that and discover more about that. That's the difference, and that's why it's so important, and that's why we do the work we do in it. Very complementary to personality, but a bit different too.
So the next question we have is, how have you seen your life change since learning about your own behavior style?
It's been an interesting journey. Like I mentioned before, you can go through a 2-day people skills workshop and you got a great foundation, but there's so many nuances to it. So when I went to the workshop, I became aware of my behavior style preferences. But I think over time, I discovered more about how I modify my behavior and why I do that. And that's been really powerful for me to recognize that. And that's what people that go through the workshop, that's also very powerful for them, recognizing like, oh yeah, I do this here, but I actually do this more over here and this over here more. Exactly. So we do change our behavior. I like to tell people that most everybody does all 4 styles to some degree or another. So for me, learning about my preference was really helpful because I recognized how this wonderful behavior style that I have and everybody has, all the behavior styles are wonderful. So when someone discovers their behavior style, we always talk about how that's great. That's a wonderful style. That's a wonderful thing that you are that way. But other people might not be as thrilled about that behavior as you are. So learning about that for me was kind of a little humbling and a little bit of an eye opener, but it was very powerful in recognizing that, yeah, my intent is really to do something positive, but that's not always the way it lands. And for everybody's behavior style, that's the reality. Their intent may be very positive, but it's not always, the impact is not always positive. And so that's where I kind of learned, and I'm still learning about that today. So that's why it was so impactful for me. My eyes were kind of open, like, wow, I had no idea that this wonderful behavior style of mine could be perceived negatively by other people. What's wrong with them? Nothing, actually. It's just these differences. So that was the impact, and I still am learning about that many years later. So
I also similar experience to all of that, where you understand yourself and then others, and you kind of add it all up. So
Exactly.
next question
Okay.
is what kind of workshops does Effectiveness Institute offer?
Hmm. Well, besides the people skills, our behavior style work, a lot of variations of that. We also have a workshop about applying that to teams. So it's a team application specifically, which is also very important. How do teams incorporate the behavior styles on their team and how do they cover their blind spots? And then also we do workshops on conflict. We have a wonderful workshop on navigating conflict effectively, very important and helpful. We have workshops on managing and leading other people effectively. And we also have a teams that work assessment, which is not about behavior styles, but it's about characteristics of high performing teams. And that's also a very powerful assessment and workshop that organizations and teams can use to help them improve how they collaborate and work together. So those are some of our offerings. Now, we've recently developed in partnership with the Folk Institute, a new workshop started developing in 2020 called Leveraging Our Diversity. And we've done that workshop because I've become aware over the years about how behavior styles is a part of diversity, certainly not all of it, but definitely an important part of it. So partnering with the Folk Institute and developing that workshop has been very exciting because it definitely takes a broader lens at diversity, which is appropriate, diversity, equity, inclusion. It takes a broader lens look at diversity, equity, inclusion, which is important, but it also incorporates behavior styles into it, which is a very real part of that diversity. So those are some of the different workshops that we offer.
So we can move on to the next question, which is a little bit about our workshops. Do we ever bring up love languages in our workshops?
They come up quite frequently, actually. They're mentioned sometimes. And while we haven't tried to go back and link them directly, I don't think it takes a lot of work to be able to see a connection between this love language and a certain behavior style or two. Um, One of the things I always tell people, I caution them on, is that sometimes while a behavior style certainly can influence someone's love language, it doesn't sync up directly to it. Sometimes people will try to make connections between the behavior style model and certain characteristics of personality that really don't sync up in the research. And with love languages, they don't really sync up either exactly. But there are certainly some connections that can be made that are valid too. A simple example of that is one of the behavior styles is a stabilizer. And one of the ways that they bring their best to people is by trying to do all they can to provide what that person needs. Whereas another behavior style, the controller behavior style, their love language, if you will, or their way of helping other people is to make sure that the best results are achieved as quickly as possible so that we don't waste a lot of time, energy, and resources on things that aren't helpful. Well, those are very different languages, if you will, but they're very complementary and they're both very important. So there is a bit of a connection between those love languages and behavior styles, even though it doesn't really sync up exactly.
I think that's a great example because when I think about love language and behavior styles, I don't see them like being complementary. Like it's hard
Mhm.
to think about it, but
Yeah.
love language is simply the behavior you show to other people to show them that you're there and you care.
Mm.
So I think it's easy to understand and not just like an intimate relationship in all your relationships, how you do that with
Yes.
the behavior you choose.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the styles really has this deep sense that if they give someone else really high quality work that's very accurate and well done, that is doing something really helpful for that person. And it's hard to argue with that.
Hmm.
But some styles don't have the same degree of appreciation for that because of how they tend to operate. So that's part of why it's really so helpful to know about these languages. Oh, so when you were doing that, your intent was really positive and trying to be helpful, but it might not have come across that way to me, which is similar to love languages too, right, Caitlin? Because some people's love language is like, well, I don't see it as a love language at all. Well, it is for that person. So,
Exactly. And
yeah.
that's where relationships can be hard sometimes because if you don't know that person's love language and you're showing them how you appreciate them in your own way, it can come off as not being appreciated. So, And it's
Exactly.
the same thing with behavior styles. So they definitely have a connection. So our next question is, you mentioned our leveraging our diversity workshop. Someone asked, why is it so important to leverage diversity in the workplace?
Great question. So I can answer that question first from a behavior style perspective. We know that these 4 different patterns of behavior, that they all bring something valuable and necessary to every workplace. Any workplace that doesn't value one of these styles, 1 or 2 of these styles, creates a real blind spot and a real problem for the whole culture in the organization. And so I could say on one level, diversity as behavior styles, it's very easy to make the connection between why it's so important to have all of those. Now, going beyond that, I would say that what I have seen in my life is that there certainly is this richness of understanding how people see things differently from their life experiences, their cultural context, right? I mean, so the gender, all these variables that people kind of bring to it create a more full picture of meaning and of life and of how to do things successfully and collaborate together. When I travel, I feel like I'm always learning so much that I didn't know before and appreciating more of things I wasn't aware of. And I think the more we can do that in organizations intentionally by building greater awareness of diversity, equity, and inclusion, builds a better culture, it builds a better civilization, and it also builds a much more productive and happier an engaged workplace as well. So I think it's helpful both from the outcomes we get from it. We get a richer, fuller, better appreciation, understanding of what we're producing and why we're doing it. But also it increases, I think, the engagement in the workplace. It does increase the engagement in the workplace.
I wanted to bring up a point that you've mentioned before that I really love. It's talking about if you acknowledge and leverage the diversity in the workplace, it makes people feel like they don't have to be in this box that a company could create.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, it really just enriches the overall company experience, right?
Absolutely. And many organizations, I'd say most organizations really struggle to value all 4 equally, much like we struggle to value, different diversity, equity, or diversity in a broader scale. Organizations have a very difficult time valuing all 4 behavior styles, even something as simple as that, simple, quote unquote, as that. And that does create blind spots and challenges. So it's very important to intentionally work at valuing and understanding diversity, I believe, because of that whole thing of engagement. And also not boxing people in too, like you said, that's a great phrase, because I know that as an older white person, I don't like to be put in that box and say, well, this means that you're this kind of a person, because in a lot of ways, I'm not that stereotypical person. At least people tell me that. I think that's true. So that's just a box. And there are a lot of boxes that we have for other people. And those boxes can be really damaging when we limit ourselves or other people by thinking of them that way.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the idea that in order to be successful, you have to fit in this box. But then that's leaving a part of your identity, a part of your certain behavior that you prefer at home, and not being able to live your best experience in life at work as well.
And to bring all you have to the organization, the team, the relationships you have in the workplace, which this is a very powerful thing to be able to do for everybody. So
exactly. So that's for our next question. What is the most exciting thing that Effectiveness Institute is currently working on?
That's a tough one because there are so many things that we are doing. As you know, Caitlin, I became the CEO and the owner of the Institute about 2.5 years ago now. And so there's been a lot of change happening since then. And 2 of the things that I will say that are coming out very soon that I'm very excited about. One of them is our certified facilitator community. So we certify people to do our work as independent consultants or people in organizations so that they can do it without having to have one of our staff or facilitators come in to do the work. So we really have done this over the years for a long time, the train the trainer model. We do a lot of that work. That's really where we focus on. So that certified facilitator community represents people who have been certified in our programs over many years. And to be honest, we haven't done a real good job in the past. I did a pretty lousy job in the past, to be honest, of really keeping in touch with and maintaining that community. And so I'm very excited to see that community coming together now and starting to build the intentional effort to reach out and stay in touch with those individuals who have passion around this, who know about this, who are bringing their unique knowledge and what they've learned to this and building that community. So that's launching now. And the second thing that's going to be launching very soon is a brand new website, which will definitely reflect a lot more of who the Institute is now. And that's going to be launching in probably the next few weeks here. So both of those things are very exciting things because they really are, I believe, capturing a lot of what the Institute is becoming and what we are doing now, and the new Institute, if you will, that is unfolding, that you, Caitlin, are exciting part of too. So
our next question, which is actually our last question,
okay.
is what is the most rewarding project or client you've had and why?
That's a good question. That's a tough one because there's so many engagements that I have with clients and work that are so engaging for so many different reasons. The one that comes to mind though is, I won't mention the client name, but we did an engagement a few months ago with a custom home builder, regional, but a lot of significant work they do, very large company. And the leaders of that company saw the value of behavior styles, and they went through the entire 2-day program with all of their employees, all of their leaders. That's a huge commitment of time and resources, but they saw how the culture needed to build the competence of understanding and knowing behavior styles, and the skill of wanting their employees to build the skill of knowing how to modify their behavior to make that positive impact, to get the best results possible in relationships and their business outcomes. And for the leaders to see that, that's very exciting for me, because I know, and I think many people know, that if the leadership doesn't buy into the whatever's being taught in the culture, it's not going to become part of the culture. So for these leaders to step up and put the time into it with the employees together, all together, to show their commitment to it, to me, that really bodes very well for that organization to, in fact, become a culture that incorporates behavior styles and values that and builds that competence throughout the organization. And so that's very exciting work when I get to do that. Great company too, by the way. So.
Well, that's all the questions we have for today. If you like this video, go ahead and subscribe to our channel, or you can give this video a thumbs up as well. Feel free to leave a comment below if you have any more questions, or maybe you would like to see a certain video from us. And also, I'll link all of our information about the Effectiveness Institute and all of our social media channels below. But thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Thanks, Caitlin.